the conservatives will try to say that the liberals are communists, and the liberals will try to say that conservatives are fascists. We've seen it happening. And interestingly, if you really take a few steps back, neither of our parties in the United States are really anything of the sort. I think if I was going to criticize the left, I would say that it leans toward being maybe authoritarian sometimes, because it likes to always think that the government should play God in people's lives. I can see where the conservatives, who are often all about national pride, could be compared to fascism because they believe in a strong America, peace through strength, that kind of policies. But the reality is, there really isn't any comparison. You can't look at America of today and say that there's anything about it that's similar to communism in the USSR, or the style of government that was taking form in Nazi Germany. It's just not in any way the same. There's a video that Donald Trump had published saying that he opposes the performance of sex change surgeries happening for children, and he's going to make it official that the United States only recognizes the existence of two genders. And people saw that video and they immediately started to think, well, that's really wild. And yeah, maybe it is wild in the climate of recent times, where suddenly acknowledging that men and women are the only two genders is somehow viewed as extremist, and saying that you can't have a child below the age of consent change their gender is viewed as in some way harmful or bigoted. But the reality is, those are fringe things. Those are extreme divergence from normal society. We've never experienced a time in history when people have been so passionate about denying basic common sense things. It's like saying that you are hateful if you officially believe that the world is round. And we have to make sure that we pander to people who believe that it is flat. And it's somehow harmful if you aren't teaching flat earth theory along with everything else in the classroom. Like, it's just, the point I'm getting at is that things have gotten really ridiculous. And when you're in an echo chamber of ridiculousness, then it starts to feel normal, because you have to go out and try to levy some sort of a defense to prove that you have a right to believe in something that's really pretty self-evident. Imagine if I have to make some sort of a well thought out scientific article of proof that the world isn't flat. Okay, I mean, I guess I can. I guess I can start putting together a PowerPoint to try to show you evidence that the world is round and not flat. But if you don't believe it, I don't even know if I can convince you, because you're just going to take anything I come up with and say, well, that's just fake. You made that up. So we've taken things which are really fringe, we've pushed those things into the mainstream, and then we've tried to say that anyone who doesn't get on board with making those things front and center is some sort of an extremist. But the reality is there's not really anything that extreme about our politics in America. Our tax rates are pretty low compared to various other European countries, from what I've heard. If we pay maybe something like 10% tax for the average person, give or take, you go to Europe and people are probably paying something more like 30%. If you look at authoritarian regimes, and it's crazy that people on the far right will point out things like the Middle East as places we want to advocate for, when the reality is those places are very authoritarian. Those are places where you really actually don't have rights to practice your religion or to practice an alternative sexual orientation or any number of things like that. But the liberals will idolize some of those places. But the reality is there are places in the world which are authoritarian, which are dangerous to civil liberty, which harm everyday people just for having opinions that don't align with the government. And yes, we do see trends which are concerning sometimes in our country. It's very concerning when you see legacy media support a political opinion and try to censor or silence any voice which doesn't agree. A simple example of this would be going into the election, where suddenly there's these articles coming out the day before the election showing what appears to be vetted proof that the Harris campaign is on track to win, that they have pulled ahead in the polls at the last minute and now they're probably going to win. It really seems a lot like fake news when you look at the red wave that followed. It looks an awful lot like somebody said, let's go ahead and publish some pieces that will help our campaign to gain momentum because we need momentum. So let's use our leverage in the media to manipulate the perception of the public. That kind of thing is very concerning because it could be a seed that leads to the loss of a free society. So, yes, there are causes for concern. Causes for concern like COVID tyranny in 2021, when businesses were saying, if you don't feel comfortable getting a vaccine, then we're going to take away your job. Or if you aren't sure that the government is handling the pandemic correctly, we're going to deplatform you and say that you're an enemy of the state. Those kinds of things are very concerning. But let's be clear. We here as a Western society have a comparatively liberal, ecumenical system of government. And many of the things that are concerning are still, in the great scheme of things, pretty tame compared to what a lot of countries around the world have to go through every day. So let's just keep that perspective. And remember that this is not, it never has been, a contest between fascists and communists. This has never been an election which was so definitive that we should look at the other side as actual enemies of the state. In fact, that kind of an attitude can be more dangerous than the risk of losing in a political contest. Because when we start to think that our neighbors are the enemy, we run the risk of destroying ourselves from within. And we undermine an intrinsic truth, which is that we have a multi-party system because both parties, if they gain absolute power for too long, will become corrupt. The United States has been more successful at avoiding tyranny than other nations, in part because it has always been a bit inefficient. It's always been designed to be a place where politicians don't get that much done, where we spend more time arguing than we spend executing. And as a result, we don't allow power to become so entrenched that it is all-consuming, all-dominating, and never able to have its bubble popped from time to time. That's a good thing about America. So, in a strange sort of a way, it's actually excellent and exactly how it should be when we see people trolling each other, roasting each other, and going through all of the motions of political banter and brinksmanship which happen in our country every 2 to 4 years. We shouldn't view this as a problem. I don't know what the future holds, but what I will say is I thought it was absolutely eloquent that after the votes were tallied and counted, the Biden administration, Joe Biden, came out and spoke of unity and congratulated President Trump. And Kamala Harris also spoke of the peaceful transfer of power and respected the outcome of the election results. To step back from all of the antics and the banter and to shake on it and say, now we can go back to being neighbors as we always have been, is an important part of the American political process. And even if we're happy that we won or we're unhappy that we didn't, at the end of the day, we're all still Americans. And we are part of a progressive, liberal, democratic republic, which is not particularly extreme on either side of the fence, even if we sometimes drift one way or the other. We are more of a centrist country than an extremist one. So anyone who wants to say that Trump is going to be like Hitler or Democrats are communists, they're really just generating clickbait. They're trying to get a reaction. They're trying to get people to freak out, become all animated, because it's fun to get a reaction out of people. But it's important for us to realize that at the end of the day, we don't really believe that. And if you want proof of that, just look at how there were political candidates saying that Trump was like Hitler the week before the election. And those same people, namely our favorite Joe Biden, will be having Trump invited to the White House next Wednesday. So, if he really believed that Trump was just like Hitler, do you think he would be doing that? Probably not. See, it's fun to rally people together and say that somebody's like Hitler or something when you're trying to get their votes. But at the end of the day, we don't really believe it, because it's just not true. At the end of the day, we're all still on the same side, and it's important to remember that. As always, thanks so much for watching.